talk a little bit about my recent announcement regarding emriv and the curated travel matcha bag. So yes, it is currently on pause right now as I figure out next steps in terms of having it produced. So if you didn't know, this is generally how it was set up. So for me, as the creative director, I got to focus on really curating the bag and the design. So yes, we used a base bag pattern and I got to curate it to carry matcha making tools. And I got to collaborate with Hannah, who is the founder of Langley Threads, a local sewing studio. And she was really able to help me get the bag produced and get it out there. So the two factors why we're just parting ways from a production standpoint is one, really don't want to take Hannah away from the heart of her work and what she does. She is a local sewing studio dedicated to teaching the youth and our local community how to sew, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And as emriv continues to evolve, I don't want to take her away from that. And another reason too is, again, she's set up to be a local sewing studio, not a production or manufacturing facility. So, and when you think about it in terms of cost and everything, it just doesn't make sense for emriv's sustainability. So I really just want to get emriv set up and in a good spot. There are a couple of ideas that I'm going back and forth, and there's some questions I have to ask myself, to be completely transparent. So one question that I have, or a couple things that I'm just thinking through, is I would love to sew the bags myself, especially since I'm still starting out as an emerging small brand and business. The only thing is I don't have all the necessary sewing equipment, because you need an industrial sewing machine and some other items, some other sewing tools, and it's quite an investment, and I'm not at that place to be able to invest in that. And another thing is craft. It takes years to develop craft, and in time, when you do develop your craft, you are faster at sewing. And there are some technical challenges with sewing the bag because there are a lot of layers to it, and just with the fabric and the interfacing that we use. So that would be another obstacle. So that is what I am working through in terms of, do I want to sew the bag myself, and how can I get set up to do so? And another thing too is I really enjoy being able to have that type of separation where I can just focus on the creative side and not so much on the production side, unless it's smaller, unless it's on a smaller scale. Then I would feel comfortable doing that because you want to grow your business, right? And you want to meet demand and do collaborations and all of that. And so so that's another thing that I'm thinking through. I really enjoy having that separation. So that way I can continue to curate the bag and make adjustments and come up with new ideas. And, you know, when just going back a little bit, if I were to going back to finding a manufacturing and production studio, so there are some nuances with that. They most likely will require a minimum order quantity. And on top of that, they wouldn't be close to me probably, where I live. So I am kind of hands-on, and I like to be involved as much as possible. So those are some other things. And another thing too is I'm not completely alone. Hannah has told me that she will support the transition, and she's honestly, truly just so amazing and happy to help if I do choose to go that route. But yeah, and then lastly, there is another thing that's on my mind. So I've seen where there are small businesses on both sides, where one, they create and produce themselves, and they're successful and super happy, and they love doing everything. And then on the other hand, I've seen small businesses who started out with the creating and producing, and they get burnout and they start to hate the craft because it's exhausting and it takes a lot of time and effort. Because also too, when you are a small business owner, it's not just creating whatever idea you have and designing and then producing. There are a lot of different hats that you have to wear, and it can be a lot, especially when it's just you. So yeah, that's another thing, is I really enjoy sewing when I can and just being able to bring something to life and having fun, but I also don't want to hate the craft either if I take it all on. So yeah, this is just me speaking from my heart and just sharing like thoughts that are going through my head right now in terms of trying to figure out how do I want to go about this. So that's why you haven't seen much movement yet on the curated travel matcha bag. And I do have new ideas for it, but it's like trying to figure out how it's going to get produced. So that is the update. And while that's kind of on pause and I'm being really intentional with figuring out next steps for that, I am also trying to expand emriv, and I'm really excited to figure out how to expand emriv on a more local level. I want to branch into making tea and beverages, and potentially work towards a goal of having a tea room. And again, it would be specializing and focusing in Japanese tea. So that is where I'm at right now with emriv. I'm not sure if you're new, I have signed up for a Japanese tea foundations course. I need to prep for tonight's tea session. Tonight is the last session, and it's just really full circle moment because we will be ending the session talking about matcha. And I'm really excited to learn more about it from an education standpoint. So I need to prep everything that I need for tonight's session and get that going. And the sessions do run quite late, so yeah, that's why today is just kind of a lighter day and not too heavy on certain things. So yeah. So right now I'm gonna make horchata, and then I have to prep it, and then it's going to refrigerate overnight, and then tomorrow I can finish making it. And it honestly, the flavors pair very well with hojicha. There are different ways to make this. For me, I like to make it dairy free. I'm also working on the flavors of it and testing out some different ideas. So just got done with the last session of the course, and I knew there was going to be an exam, but I didn't know it was going to be like right at the end of the lecture. So that was the only thing that kind of threw me off. But other than that, I passed. I passed, and it's just kind of like a nice way to end the night for me. But yeah, we covered so much. We went over, we first started the lecture with Hojicha, and then we went through the lecture we went through the lecture learning about matcha and the process of how it becomes matcha. And I really liked that we got to, also too, there's like a fly flying around. We also got to see what tencha looks like. And I know earlier I mentioned kukicha, which are, so during the processing phase, you get tencha, right? And that I believe has no stems, but then you also can get kukicha, which has the stems and the veins of the leaves. And so we got to compare those two, and it was really cool to see and to compare. And then we ended the session with matcha, and we got to compare matcha from a first harvest versus a second harvest. And we got to just taste them both, and then obviously the whisking. I think another thing that I need to work on that is the whisking method. I found it interesting. There's a certain way to hold your whisk, and you're supposed to use your thumb and then 2 fingers and forth. And I think I read it. Oh yeah, like a snapping of your wrist. So yeah, that's something I need to continue to work on. But other than that, yeah, that's the end of the Japanese tea foundations course. Bittersweet for it to come to an end, and I'm really excited that I passed the exam. I definitely want to take the next level, which is intermediate, so I'm going to look into those steps, and hopefully there's some availability. So again, it is quite late, and I'm just gonna go ahead and end the vlog here. And even though I'm not tired, I'm gonna try to get some sleep. So